channel introduction video for really a defense of the 14th Amendment in the United States anyway. The rest of the world, kind of the defense of the principle, that the majority should not exploit minorities, that they shouldn't have double standards. It sort of throws out the whole democratic principle if the democracy merely uses the minorities, philosophical or racial or whatever. It treats them in a manner inconsistent with how they would like to be treated. It kind of just throws the whole thing in the garbage. And so that's happened in this country. The cigarette taxes are outrageous. I mean, it's just an outrageous tax, the most taxed substance on earth. We're talking 800%, 900% tax. And it's just it's a vice, and so it's just a 800% vice tax. Alcohol might have a 10 or 20% tax on it. So you're talking about, a difference of not 10 times, but getting close to 100. At least a 70% difference or something, 70 times difference. So there's no excuse for it. It's just exploitation. It's just the key ingredient to it is that people who smoke cigarettes are addicted. It's not a choice. It's not like taxing yachts or some other thing that people can choose not to buy. Cigarette smokers are addicted. It's a very powerful addiction, and that's just a proven fact. It's not subject to varying opinion. It's just demonstrated that number of times people have attempted to quit smoking and failed. And that makes this all the more sinister, more insidious. And the tax policy is defended with lies, just plain flat lies. This notion has been spread that cigarette smokers are somehow a liability to society, and exactly the opposite is true. Cigarette smokers don't die when they're 21 or 35. They don't just die when they're in their productive years. They die in the years where they were going to suck something back from the system, when they're going to start getting back in medical care and start getting back in pension and Social Security. So they save a society a tremendous amount of money. They don't collect their pensions, full pensions. They don't collect full Social Security, full medical benefits. It's much more expensive. The older you are when you die, the more expensive it is. That's just a fact. And mortality is a fact of life. So the fact that cigarette smokers die of their addiction means absolutely nothing. If they didn't die from the cigarettes, they would die from something else a few years later. And so it's just all a big fat lie that they've built this nonsense out of. Alcoholics kill people on the highway. They kill innocent people. Cigarette smokers do not do that. There's just no excuse for this duplicitous, dishonest, this grossly unfair public policy. It's a violation of the 14th Amendment. If we still had a 14th Amendment, the same 14th Amendment we had in the early 1900s, this law would not be possible. This taxation would be overruled by the Supreme Court, who thought there was actually a 14th Amendment at that time. The reason why alcohol was not taxed out of existence and why a constitutional amendment was required is because there was a serious respect for the idea that majorities don't have the power to impose their will on minorities in some inconsistent and unfair manner. The 14th Amendment demands equal protection under the law. So you can't compose laws that only affect certain people in certain ways based on notions, just dishonest notions of difference. You have to do better than that, and it should never have been allowed. And the exploitation is just grotesque now. It's just gotten grotesque. So instead of taxing income or something real, they're just persecuting a minority that has no capacity to do anything about it. The other disadvantage cigarette smokers have is they're not segregated. They're not isolated in one state or one community, so they can't have any political power. They're a politically powerless minority that is paying a huge price in taxes, just gigantic. And it's just, there's no way it should be, and it should be changed, and there's no other minority should ever be subjected to this mistreatment. And it's just a complete violation of fundamental fairness principles. It's just that people just bogeyman something, and then they can get away with it. The majority can feel like they've done something because they say, we're doing it for the kids. You're not doing it for the kids. You're doing it for the money, because you don't want to pay your taxes, so you'll impose the tax burden on somebody else, some other minority you can exploit and control, because you know they can't control their addiction. And it's just, you couldn't get away with it if you taxed any other substance on earth. You couldn't get away with it because the addiction wouldn't be strong enough to compel the people to keep exercising their freedom. And the fact that you basically have, it would have been a prohibition if it wasn't for the addictive nature of the substance. If they weren't addictive, people would not be smoking anymore, because you have taxed them out of their freedom to do so. And it's grotesque. And the fact that cigarette smokers haven't been able to organize themselves and to say, we're not going to stand for it anymore, this abuse, is it's disappointing. But I mean, it's sort of understandable, because the reason why, look, there's people who smoke and they drink and they have kind of messed up lives, and so they're not really an easy minority to organize. They're kind of fatalistic. I mean, the reason why they smoke is probably because they just don't give a damn. And people should have a right to not give a damn, though, without paying extra taxes for it. It's not something society has a right to persecute people for. Certainly they have a right to discourage certain behavior, but the discouragement has to be within proportion. It has to be the same proportional discouragement they have for other behavior in society. And this is no way proportional to any of those other discouragements that are in the law. It's just grotesque exploitation. It's just obvious and grotesque. And it's, fuck you is what there needs to be. Some sort of counter argument, some sort of counter movement to this bullshit rhetoric, this bullshit tyranny, and that's all it is. It's just cheap nonsense law. It's an abuse. It's a disgrace to the Constitution of the United States, and it's a disgrace to honesty. Like I said, you want to protect kids, then you punish the criminals. Punish people for selling cigarettes to minors. Regulate the tobacco. Oblige people who are addicted to cigarettes. Oblige them to register and to be able to buy their cigarettes, and for themselves only, for their own consumption. And then you've solved the problem. Another teenager will never have to smoke again if you just make cigarettes inaccessible to anybody but registered addicts. But that's not a solution. You don't want that solution. You don't want a solution that actually does protect children. You want a solution that makes it possible for you to exploit a minority and steal their fucking money. And that's all it comes down to. You just want to steal their fucking money. And cigarette smokers really got to get off their fucking ass and say, this is bullshit. You're talking thousands of dollars a year in taxation. I mean, it's bad enough we get taxed out of our own houses by people who have kids and demand that we pay to build their kids' sports fields and tennis courts and 9 million other luxuries. That somehow it's a public responsibility to finance music lessons and all kinds of other nonsense. That we're going to get taxed out of our goddamn house to take care of their kids. It's bad enough we have bullshit policy like that, but to have this kind of nonsense, to say, yeah, we'll take another $3,000 or $4,000 out of your blood and bones, just because you have acquired an addiction to a substance in your childhood. You made a mistake when you're 11 years old, and we're going to beat you up for it for the rest of your life. It's not bad enough that you have to waste enough money on it just as it is. Just at its real world price, which should be $7 a carton. No, we're going to make you pay $70 a carton. We're going to extract a 90% more penalty out of your hide because you made a mistake when you were 10 or 11 years old. I mean, this is just nonsense. It's bullshit. It's cruel. It's disgusting. And like I said, it just demonstrates exactly what people are made of. They are made of nothing. They have no depth of principle, no real sincere give a damn about anything but themselves. The selfishness is obvious in this kind of nonsense. This is as disgusting as religious assholes putting their God on the money. This is just as cheap an abuse of the political process. And like I said, people should just gotta stand up somewhere and say, fuck this bullshit. And that's the hard part to do. It's hard to organize into anything and to have any kind of weapon. How do you fight back against a majority that keeps you out of the political process, gives you no congressional representation, no senatorial representation, no representation whatsoever, no even hope for representation in any political body, because you aren't a segregated minority. That's why this democracy needs to change, and that's on one of the other channels that I'll post links to. But this is an important subject, because just even for what it just represents, it represents a complete destruction of the meaning and substance of constitutional amendments. They might as well not be there if they're not going to mean anything. And when you can treat one vice differently than you treat another vice, merely because one is a majority vice and one is a minority vice, you have no constitution. It's gone. It's been destroyed. And that's where we stand. That's the world we live in. And like I said, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how we get people organized, but we've got to get organized, and we've got to stop it. Because if it can happen this egregiously and this obviously and this out in the open, we really are fucked. We really are doomed.